in Hindu areas in London. But in Muslim areas of London, white boys are relentlessly beaten night after night after night just for being white and walking down the street. And white girls and Sikh girls and Hindu girls and black girls are relentlessly hit upon, quite often literally drugged and gang raped. And this is something which, as I say, is not a matter of racial thing. It doesn't affect other communities. It doesn't come from other third world communities. But whether you're in Sweden or Norway or London or France or Australia, if you get gang rape, it is a phenomenon that comes from the Muslim community. People run away from it, such that the rural areas of Norway now are literally filling up with middle-class liberals fleeing from Holland, where their ideology has helped to create in Holland a multicultural society which is set to be taken over by Islam, and so now the ones with the money are running away from it. To give you some very brief statistical ideas on this, the Parliamentary Commission in Holland last year concluded that by 2017, at the very latest, all of Holland's cities would be majority Muslim. France, the figure in present of France is 12% of the French population is Muslim. That doesn't account for illegals, and the statistics show, even without the illegals put into it, that by 2025, France will be 1/4 Muslim. More than half of all school-aged children in France in 10 or 12 years will be Muslim. In the UK, the figures officially are much lower. The figure is 2.8%, 1.6 million, out of a population of 60 million. But nobody in their right minds actually believes any politician talking statistics, certainly not a government talking statistics, and certainly not liberal governments talking statistics about immigration. You see, the day before the 7/7 bombings in London, where the tube station and the bus were blown up, all the establishment politicians talking about how important Islam was to Britain's society, what a contribution Muslims made, were saying there are now nearly 4 million Muslims in Britain. 2 days after 7/7, there was 1.6 million. So somebody is lying, and usually with immigration statistics, it's the liberals in the media and in government. Simply put, all over Europe on average, Western Europe I'm talking about, not the East, Western Europe, between 16 and 20% of all children are from Muslim families right now. That's the picture of the future. The estimates of how many there are range from 25 million up to Muammar Gaddafi's 50 million, out of a population of 450 million. And it's set, whatever figure you take, it's set to double without a shadow of a doubt by 2025. On top of that, the European Union intends to allow Turkey to join, which overnight is a further 68 million Muslims. It's a huge, huge thing that's happening in Europe. As this increases, it has a self-fulfilling effect as well. It's a virtuous spiral, if you like it, or a vicious spiral if you don't like it. Not least because of the huge implications to the taxes that are paid by people from other communities. To give you just 2 examples of that. In Denmark, Muslims at present officially make up 5% of the population, but they take 40% of all the money spent on welfare benefits. This is not overall. Obviously, some Muslims are very hard-working, but overall, on average, statistically, this is not a hard-working population. This is a population living on the back of all the other communities. As a little microcosm of that, the 4 suicide bombers who murdered more than 50 people in London on July the 7th, 2005, between those 4 had collected £250,000, that's $500,000 in state benefits, and had also received something like £200,000 in government grants to establish Islamic training centres for young people in part of Yorkshire in England. Why is this happening? Well, first of all, as I've already briefly suggested, it's the nature of the beast. Islam is a religion in which heaven is attained by what you do in this world to spread Islam. It's a religion at one level It's a very efficient imperialistic machine for taking over other people's countries and territories on the other. So it just does what it always has done. But there's more to it than that. There's a conscious and deliberate plan, and there has been, from several different sources. And along with the plan, there go resources to boot. One of the main ones in Britain, throughout Europe, is the Muslim Brotherhood, which was established in 1923 as part of, there's been an ongoing revival of radical Islam, really going back to about 1800. Before that, it was asleep for quite some time. But the Muslim Brotherhood, created in 1923 in the Middle East, was about finding ways to spread Islam worldwide. It's particularly from the 1960s, a big effort was made by the Muslim Brotherhood. Thousands, literally thousands of Muslims, mainly from Egypt, moved to Germany. There was various reasons for them picking Germany. It was a particularly soft, liberal society. The reaction from the horrors of Nazism and so on made it a particularly soft place for people from the Third World to settle. A very, very good welfare system. And also there was already established a connection between radical Islam and Germany in the Nazi era, because Nazism and radical Islam cooperated extraordinarily closely. So that was already established. Some of the people who first turned up in Germany in the 1960s with the Muslim Brotherhood had actually been in the Waffen-SS at the tail end of the Second World War. So it was a natural connection to make. The Islamic Centre of Munich became the centre of it, and that in turn was the basis of the Islamic Society of Germany, which became a huge and massively funded organisation. This is an important thing, the massive funding. Really, Islam would still be something in the Middle East, in the backwaters of the world, if it wasn't primarily for the fact that Saudi Arabia has such a vast amount of oil wealth, and that oil wealth was discovered in a place which had fairly recently been conquered by the Wahhabist sect, which is the most extreme of the extreme of the extreme of radical Islam. I can't begin to think of the best Christian analogy, but if you think of the most extreme and extraordinarily intolerant Christian sect, and then put it on acid, and then think that it's just discovered under its compound somewhere out in Utah or whatever, it's just discovered the biggest oil reserves in the world. And of course it's going to use that money to subvert and change other Christian sects and beliefs and try and turn them all their way. And that's, roughly speaking, what happened. This organisation had established, and still it was work to establish, closer and closer links in all the European countries. Sweden, France, Britain, Holland, the Netherlands, Italy, all over. It's a massively huge network, each one of them supporting hundreds upon hundreds of different community groups, youth education groups, media pressure groups, and so on. It's a very, very powerful beast. The Islamic Council of Europe was established again with Saudi and Egyptian Saudi money in 1973 in London. The irony, actually, is that most of these people, if they were in the supposedly moderate or partly moderate Islamic countries of the Middle East, most of them would have been hanged or tortured or shot by their own rulers. But they took refuge in Germany, in France, in London, and turned them into hotbeds of an extraordinarily extreme, radical and confident form of Islam. In 1980, the Islamic Council of Europe issued a document on Islamic human rights, and more particularly, their relationship with the West as they were living in the West. And this document sets out a blueprint for over a period of decades for, in effect, conquest of the West, transformation of the West, with the very first part of it being that Islamic communities must ghettoize themselves so as to prevent any possibility of their young people being contaminated with Western views. That's the very start of it, and then spreading out from those ghettos. Initially peacefully, but once there's enough power, doing what the Quran says, and that's once there's enough of you, then you get your way by force. It's divinely ordained as far as a good Muslim is concerned. There's other strands of radical Islam as well. Britain in particular is affected by the Deobandi strand. Basically, in simple terms, the Wahhabis sent missionaries to India when it was the whole of India before it was divided in 1948, and that mutated into a strand called Deobandyism, which is now